presented by the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Welcome to the Paranormal News Insider for the week of September 6th, 2022, and officially episode number 527. And this is your host, Dr. Brian D. Parsons, and we are live on the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com. And it helps if I look at my show notes here. There they are, ParanormalKing.com. That's where we're at. Or at least that's where you should be at right now. And you can join us in the chat room. You can listen live from there and clickety-clack and type away and have some fun. You got to bring your own beverages, however, and snacks. They're not provided. Got some interesting news tonight, some updates. And I got duped on a story. It's pretty rare, but sometimes it happens. That's going to be our leadoff story since it happened a while ago, and I kind of missed it. We're also going to talk some UFO news. MUFON has released their sighting statistics for the month of August, since we're obviously in September. So, yeah, last month. And we'll also have some ghost stuff. Ghosts are back in the news, of course, because it's almost October, and you expect that kind of stuff to happen. I call it the silly season because all of a sudden that people that think we're a bunch of weirdos all of a sudden want us to come into buildings and libraries and talk about investigating ghosts. All of a sudden we're cool. We're rock stars, I guess. And, all of a sudden they care about us or think that we're normal or whatever. But, yep, it's getting there. It's trees are starting to turn colors. I'm not happy about it. The smell of pumpkin is in the air. Things have gone from bright yellows and greens to oranges and browns. And football is right around the corner. Of course, live in the Cleveland, Ohio area. So, of course, we have a little football team up here. Speaking of orange and brown. And we got a good football game set up this Sunday against our former starting quarterback. Should have been a backup. But anyway, that's just my opinion. And, of course, baseball is winding down. We got a month left. Oh, man, it's going to be fun. But I'm not a big fan of fall. But it's fun when all these stories start piling up about ghosts and people want to hear about weird things happening. And no matter where you're at here in the United States, I pretty much guarantee that one of, if not more than one of, your local libraries will have somebody speaking, hopefully an author, somebody who's written some stuff on ghosts, but also probably a local paranormal investigator will be speaking. Maybe as well. Usually libraries only do one presentation for ghosts this next month, but, we'll see. But keep your eyes peeled in your local libraries. Check it out. It's nice because it's free. Libraries will present this stuff just to bring people in, to get people to realize there's a place that you can borrow books. Usually you can rent movies and stuff too out of there too. So, it's a thing to do. And hopefully Halloween goes off without a hitch this year. Candy is in your stores, so hopefully they don't pull the plug and cancel it. But so far so good. I think it's on. Halloween is still good. Can't do Halloween virtually. And unfortunately, yes, we do have some cancellation news toward the end of the show. But a bright spot about that, we'll talk about some space news at the end of the show. And some pretty big Well, I'll just say it now. It's a big birthday. There's a birthday for one of our spacecraft. I think it's exciting. So I'm almost as old as this thing in space. Pretty cool. Actually, no, I'm older than it. Yikes. Wrong way. Anyway, we'll start off the news in the cryptid arena, and I kind of alluded to it when I started off the show that kind of got duped on a story. I usually don't get duped, and what I mean is by fooled with information. And a lot of times I'll use, let's see, well, Google news feeds. So you can type in keywords, and what the news feeds will do is it'll search for these keywords in stories or headlines and sort it out and bring it to you based on algorithms. So you're not wasting your time with garbage stories. But sometimes things you don't want to read pop in there, but it's still using the keyword. So it's not really the algorithm's fault. It's just because somebody else uses that word for something different than your intention. I used phrases before, but that really narrows things down. So a lot of my news comes from that. Not all of it, most of it. And that's how I stay ahead of places like the Anomalist and Unexplained Mysteries and some other places that rely on users to update their databases of stories, which I have links to those on my website at paranewsinsider.com. Those news feeds are available through there. But got usually a day or two lead on those. So a lot of the stuff that we talk about here on the show, one of the reasons why I do a show on Tuesdays, not just because the slot's available, but because Monday's a really bad night to do news, people going back to work, but also just the news in general. Coming out of the weekend, stuff is just starting to trickle in on a Monday afternoon. So I'd rather wait one day to disseminate everything that happened on Monday, and a lot of stuff is just catching up on Tuesdays. So it just makes a lot better sense to do a show early in the week to catch up on the weekend stuff coming out. And like I said, a lot of times I'm posting or I'm talking about stuff here on the show a day or two before it's being posted on these bigger paranormal news websites. So yeah, you're getting your news quicker here, folks. It's another reason why you should tune in every Tuesday night. And you know what? Every night here on the Paranormal King Radio Network. Why not? There's great shows every night, and this show here will repeat all throughout the week. So if you miss it, I don't know. I can't remember what night. It repeats every now and again. You can check the listing at paranormalking.com. But yeah, every now and again, stories will pop in there, and I get all excited. I read the headline. Now, a lot of times I'll see the story and I'll remember it. I'll know, like, hey, wait a minute, that happened a while ago. That happened last year. That happened 5 years ago, and it doesn't fool me. But other times I've not seen that story. That's what happened with this particular story. It was a story about a tiger sighting out west, and I'd not remember hearing about this. So I clicked on it and I started looking at the story, and I decided, hey, this is going to make it. This is going to be one of my stories, maybe my lead-off story for the week, because this is breaking news. This is a big story, and I figured out why, because here in the United States, most people, not everybody, will write the date September 6th. So 9/6/2022, because 9/6/22 is 1922 or 20. I don't know. Anyway, it's the year 22, I guess you could say more efficiently. But either way, if it's 9/6, but the story was 9/6, but it was actually 6/9. So it was a different month. They just kind of had the dates flipped. So it was was that June? Yeah, 6 would be June. So I got fooled by, I guess it fooled the news feed generator from Google. So thanks a lot, Google. I got all excited about it. As soon as I started doing research, I realized it was from earlier this year. I'm like, whoops. Well, I still think it's a cool story. So I'm going to talk about it because there's some very valuable lessons involved in this story. And it happened in Carson City, Nevada. Never been there. A guy was, I don't know what he was doing. He was just hanging around, but he photographed what appeared to be, again, a tiger. Unfortunately, the tiger was laying dead on the side of the road, and he took a very far away picture of it, kind of a weird angle. I mean, if I see a tiger on the road, I guess I'd be a little hesitant to get a little close myself, but maybe not myself because I think it'd be kind of cool, even though it's dead. You never know with animals. If they're alive or they're dead. Let's see here. See if I can get this in the chat room. Oh, where'd it go? There it is. And so he took this picture of and to the local news called around. Nobody knew anything about it. The sheriff's department came out. Nobody knew anything. They had not heard anybody reporting a dead tiger or even a missing tiger. And so no alert was made, obviously, of tiger's dead. And the weirdest thing of all, well, maybe not the weirdest thing, but he went out later and the tiger was gone. It was weird. It just disappeared. Actually, the story was from May, now that I'm looking at it. It was 5/9. So, yeah, it was 9/5. It hit the news feed. Never mind. May. That's how long ago it was. But I had not heard about it. So I thought it was pretty interesting. But the large animal was tan and white with the black stripes on it. So, looks like a tiger. And at first glance, if you're just looking, maybe driving down the road or you're across the street, and you look, well, what is that? It's like a tiger laying on the street. It doesn't look like a stuffed tiger. And if you've listened to the show for any period of time, we've talked about those stories. A couple major metropolitan cities where people have shown up, police involved, guns drawn, and it turned out just to be a stuffed animal. So that's happened before, believe it or not, more than once. It's usually a tiger that people see that's a stuffed animal. So that was kind of like maybe one of my first thoughts, but you could tell the way the animal's positioned. It looks like a natural death, and it looks like a real cat. And he says it was on its side along Curry Street behind the Nevada State Railroad Museum. His name was Mike Bohemier. He said he saw the animal around 10 a.m. and went to look for it later, but found that it had disappeared, which got him a little nervous. What, did it get up and walk away? The Nevada Department of Wildlife stated that they never received any reports of any tiger, let alone a dead one, and the photograph actually looked more like a bobcat than a tiger. And when I first saw the story, I was actually at work, and I was just kind of scrolling through some of the news, and it's probably why I got fooled. And I was like, ooh, tiger. And I kind of zoomed, pinched and zoomed in on the picture. I'm like, it doesn't look like a tiger to me. It looks like the feet are way too small. And the head looked like a bobcat. And didn't really have too much time to really dig into it. And if it was that night, it was the next night, I started writing it up and realized, yeah, that's definitely a bobcat. So a day later, after that story went viral way back in May of this year, Misty Sims Olvera stepped forward and turned in a photograph taken by her husband of the same animal on the side of the road. Well, that view of the animal was on the same side of the road, looking pretty much at a downward angle at the creature. And it clearly showed, it was the same exact positioning of the calf, the legs together and the head turned up. Unfortunately, that angle also showed that the animal had lost a little blood through the body as well, so it pretty much proved that it had been killed. And looking down at it, you could clearly show the bobtail of the bobcat, and as well as the head too, because the head, they have that tuft of fur on the cheeks and the ears that kind of look a little lynx-like. You know what I mean? Like the lynx, and that it kind of, what's one of the biggest things that separates that? People always look at the tail. Well, it's got a bob tail, so it's a bobcat. It's not a mountain lion. It's not a tiger. That's true, but also the head shape, the short legs, longer body. There's a lot of details in it, and the way the stripes are a lot different than a tiger. But at that glance, looking at it, the initial photograph, yeah, I could see how somebody would have been confused. Somebody who's not used to looking at that. But if you live in Nevada, we've got them here in Ohio, but they're pretty rare to be that color. That's probably a younger. It's probably a juvenile. They have the brighter color when they're younger, as do mountain lions, believe it or not. Mountain lions actually will have stripes when they're cubs. So people get a little confused if and when they see that as well. But story came out in May, but I thought it was pretty cool because of mistaken identity. And you hear a lot of people confuse mountain lions and bobcats. They think they see a mountain lion, but it's really a bobcat, because bobcats are very, there's a lot of them out there, but you rarely see them. They're very stealthy. They keep a very, very low profile. They keep very far away from people. Unfortunately, mountain lions are not as disciplined. This is probably a pretty good word, as bobcats are. Bobcat will purposely venture well out of the way of any human, I don't know what you'd call it, interference or structures to maintain its low profile. Whereas a mountain lion, they're kind of all over the place. They just want to get from point A to point B, and it usually takes them all the way through C and Z to get there. And they're all over the place. And unfortunately, that's why they end up in places like downtown Chicago, Illinois, and crossing the Wilbur Creek. What is it, the Wilbur Cross Parkway? That was out in just less than an hour away from New York City, in Connecticut, where a cat was struck and killed back in 2008. Made its way all the way across from the Black Hills of South Dakota. And that caused a stir, caused a big change. And that was right after the eastern cougar was declared extinct. Got a lot of everybody a little freaked out about that. The bobcats will have on their inner legs, it's another way to see the change between a bobcat and a mountain lion. If they're walking and you capture them, even if you can't see that tail, even if you can't see their head, if you could see the insides of their legs, mountain lions' legs on the inside are just pure white. As a cub, they will have spots on the legs. However, bobcats will have black stripes. So it's a really easy telltale, one of the many signs. There's probably about a dozen different things you could look at to separate a bobcat and a mountain lion. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, there's a game. Now, what the heck is it called? I can't remember off the top of my head. But there's a. It's called Cougar or Not. It's to play it every Friday. The woman who does it, she's in and out of Antarctica all the time studying penguins. So I don't know. She hasn't done it recently, I don't think. I've not seen it pop up on Twitter. But it's a fun game where they post. People will send pictures in of game cameras that people think are mountain lions. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're not. Some of them are pretty difficult. And she'll ask all the Twitter followers what they think of the capture. It's pretty fun, and it does sharpen your skills, and you do learn things, how to identify animals. And I'm usually right, by the way, but sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'm just hopeful. But speaking of hopeful, you probably thought you'd make it through September without hearing about the Loch Ness Monster. But it's back, it's alive, and it's been seen again in 2022. So yes, we can all breathe a sigh of relief that the Loch Ness Monster is not dead. It's alive and well, swimming in the loch. Ticket sales for Scotland just went to the roof. People are getting ready to fill up the boats over there to go searching for this creature. But it's just the 5th sighting of the year. And it was documented back on August 27th. A man was filming the loch while on the northern end of Loch Ness. So Loch Ness is like this long, thin, it's like a pencil-shaped lake, which that's one of the reasons why, believe it or not, it's one of the reasons why people see stuff on there is because it's a long, thin shape with very steep banks pretty much all around it. So when the wind blows, it creates these V shapes in the loch. And if you've ever been in a bathtub, I mean, I know it's not 1850 anymore, but some people take baths, right? And not so much a hot tub. Well, that sounds good right about now. But a bathtub. So if you're in a bathtub and you push the water towards one end, and then you pull the water back and you push it and it goes back and forth. It kind of bounces off both ends, right? Goes off one, comes back, hits, goes back and forth, right? Well, the wind creates that as well, as does the moon can do that with tides, especially the larger and the longer the lake, the more of an effect that'll have. Now, it's not really that prevalent on Loch Ness. The tide there is probably not even a couple of inches, so it's really not going to matter that much. But the wind does create what's called seiche. So the water rushes to one side, hits the banks, and kind of comes back. You don't always see it. It's not like in a bathtub where it's a giant wave, but sometimes you'll see V-shaped waves on these lakes. It's not horizontal like you'll see on a larger lake, like if you're out in the ocean or you're on a regular lake, because it's a longer, thinner stretch of water. Plus, you have higher banks, so it affects the way the wind hits the water. Says, I see you didn't think you were going to learn some science stuff. Plus, there's a lot more to come, trust me, tonight, so stick with me. There's a little math involved, too, later on, so yikes, I know. But this seiche, so you get the wind blowing, and it looks like it's blowing in one direction. And then that water sometimes will come from the other direction, and it almost looks like something is swimming in the water. And that is what probably fools about 90% of the people that claim to see the Loch Ness Monster in Loch Ness. They've never seen a seiche before. They've never been in a long stretch of water. This phenomena happens in a lot of different places. Here in the United States, there's fjords on the West Coast, and I believe there's only one fjord in the United States on the East Coast. It's up in Maine, and I've been there a few times, and I've seen those weird ripples in the water in that fjord. It's a very long, thin stretch of land with very high banks on both sides, and I've seen that same exact phenomena out there, and I can see why people are duped by this, and that's what happened with this last sighting. So this was a physical sighting. Last year, 2021, they did split sightings from live in-person sightings, people who were actually there on the banks in Scotland, looking at the water, looking at the peat-colored water, like tea, like black tea colored water, versus those people that are sitting at home, whether they're in Hong Kong or Brazil, Denmark, or even on the other side of Scotland somewhere. Or maybe in France. Where's my French fans at? All right, there's two of you. So yeah, not a huge thing. And when I saw it, I saw the picture. I'm like, man, I really want to see the video. Supposedly, the video was a 7-minute video, although no physical creature could be seen in addition to this purported wake. So the person who saw it, the person who filmed it, claims that the wake, whatever was creating this kind of a disturbance on the surface of the water, was going against the prevailing currents. And that's what caused a lot of the controversy. And that's why it was officially created into an official Loch Ness Monster sighting based on the call it criteria, but the official Loch Ness Monster sightings register, which is kept by Gary Campbell. And I guess it's not going to let me post that picture. Yeah, you're not missing much anyway. It's the V shape. It's more interesting to watch the video. The video, unfortunately, was actually only 15 seconds long of what they showed. Very disappointed in that. You're talking 7 minutes, but you're only going to show me 5 seconds. But in that 15-second clip, it's very far away. And then all of a sudden, it kind of zooms in a little bit. And you see a passenger ship on the kind of the furthest shore, kind of hugging the shoreline, probably a little deeper water. So you would assume that the center of the loch would be deeper. That's not always the case. And that's why I like to see boat traffic on a place, or at least know where it's at, because then I can look up depth, so I can determine whether or not that's a shallower or deeper area, which would create different types of waves. And so when I saw the boat on the farthest away shore, I thought, well, it's probably deeper there. And what we're seeing is shallower water. It's more easily affected by currents or wind. So it's kind of what, and it just looks just like all the other pieces of evidence that have shown the siege before, the water sloshing from one end to the other. Let's see if a name change puts that up there. Anyway, that's your Loch Ness Monster sighting update. So we officially have, oh, there it is. So if you're in chat, you can see the picture. This is a cropped, kind of pushed up view of it. And there is a video out there. I'll throw the YouTube. It's on YouTube. Throw the YouTube link here in chat here in a second. And that probably won't work either, but we'll try it anyway. And so what you're seeing is there's a kind of a brighter spot there on the middle left, V shape pointed in one direction. And they state that the other waves that you see darker are traveling in the other direction. I think that's more of a optical illusion, because of the angle of that water that's reflecting back is reflecting the sunlight. So I think it's kind of messing with them. Those are steep angles. And there's like I said, a ship going through there. There might have been a ship that went through before that, and it would take quite a while. It's a pretty wide stretch of the loch. Yeah, not the widest, I guess, but still, it would probably create a little bit of a delay in those get those waves going by. But it does kind of look kind of cool. But no monster was seen, so there's nothing there to really show any sort of creature. But I've stuck the YouTube video link in there. Feel free to check that out. Again, it's only 15 seconds long, so I'm not going to lose you for too long. And hopefully I'll bring you back here with some UFO news from MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, the largest UFO investigation and data collection organization in the world. They are. They've not that many members compared to what they had 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but they're still the biggest. And yeah, the Loch Ness Monster, I don't know. Anything go. A bird is a I don't know, but it keeps it alive, I guess. Anyway, MUFON has released their August 2022 sightings. I was really excited about this because it's been a pretty big disappointment for the summertime. You'd think, COVID was pretty big. Those numbers in 2020 were pretty big. 2021 was overall kind of a big disappointment. You figure people are getting out, but it's not reflecting in the number of reports. Did people just exhaust everything that they wanted to talk about with UFO sightings? And UFOs were pretty darn big in the news last year, all summer long. But not very positive for MUFON this year. I don't think a whole lot has been positive for MUFON in the last couple of years. And again, despite the increased attention of UAPs and UFOs by the media, it seems like the government is talking more about UFOs than all these conspiracy theorists or UFO investigators and researchers. It seems like you hear more the word UFO on CNN than you do anybody else. It's kind of a really weird role reversal. But we did see an uptick of reports this year. So let's look at what do we have last month? 620. Yeah, not very many last month. So July was the highest month so far the year. 634 total reports for the month of July, and that was a little bit higher than June's 633. A little bit, I mean one. But that was the highest total we'd seen in probably 2 years. Well, since April of 2020, and we still haven't beaten that yet, but the month of August yielded 934 reports from around the world. That's a pretty big jump. It's a pretty big increase, and it's a lot higher than what I thought. I used to do predictions, and I got pretty close a few times, but then, it's just like blindfold throwing a dart down the driveway, pretty much. Not very close lately. So I kind of gave it up, but 934, that's pretty impressive. Again, the highest total since April of 2020. And the United States, of course, since MUFON is based out of the United States, based out of here in Ohio, in Cincinnati, Ohio, 744 sightings with the United States out of the total 934. The high water mark was 516 out of the United States back in June, and the highest number previous to this year was back in April of 2020, just like the total number of sightings. That month there were 770 U.S. sighting reports. Looking at the rest of the totals here, Canada turned in the next amount with 51. France, my French friends out there, turned in 43. United Kingdom had 30. Belgium had 11. Iran had 5. Brazil 4. Ireland and Germany had 3 each. Spain, India, Mexico, Portugal, Italy, and Turkey turned in 2 reports each, with another 28 countries, I'm not going to name all those, turning in 1 report each. Breaking down the 744 U.S. reports, California, of course, led the way with 60 reports, and I always explain that every month. California should lead because they have the highest population. So if you have the highest population, by mathematics, your state should lead in the highest number of reports. Just kind of sort of makes sense. Texas had 46. Washington had 42. Pennsylvania and Florida both turned in 38. Ohio was there with 36. Colorado had 34. New York had 31. Arizona 30. Michigan 28. Sounds like a football game. Illinois 23. Massachusetts 22. New Jersey had 19. Missouri had 18. Oregon 16. Maryland, Nevada, Kentucky, and North Carolina had 13 each. Indiana and Tennessee had 12. See, Oklahoma, Minnesota, and Wisconsin turned in 11 reports each. Virginia and Connecticut had 10. Arkansas and New Hampshire had 9. Vermont and Rhode Island had 8. That's pretty steep for those guys, being smaller states. Utah, West Virginia, Georgia, Maine, they had 7 reports each. Iowa, New Mexico, Kansas, and Alabama had 6 each. I don't know why I was reading that. I was thinking, it's Kansas and Alabama, a couple of bands. I was just thinking music. But Idaho, Louisiana, North Dakota, Wyoming, those states had 5. Mississippi had 4. South Dakota and Montana had 3. Alaska and Hawaii had 2 each. And I guess that leaves Delaware, South Carolina, Nebraska, and the District of Columbia turning in 1 report each. But we'll see. I mean, where do we go from here? UFOs hasn't really been in the middle of the media that much anymore. We don't see that much about it. But I don't know. We'll see what happens as far as what we do moving forward. But they got to get off. They got to get off the couch. They got to get off that 70s love seat and start doing some campaigning and stop, just appealing to the members, because the members are getting older. The members are retiring. The members are getting, they're just getting older. And so how are you bringing new people into this stuff? And what are we doing to keep those involved, other than having a giant yearly meeting? I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I don't know. What did I say Georgia was? Did I mention Georgia? I had to mention Georgia. Let's see. They didn't turn in the end. Georgia. Georgia had 7 reports each, with Maine, West Virginia, and Utah. MUFON is considered a non-profit organization. There for a while, they were getting money from, oh man, I had his this picture on my mind. The guy with the big mustache. The guy that got rich UFO guy that owned the property out west. You guys know what I'm talking about. The ranch out there, the UFO guy. Oh man. Anyway, he was supporting MUFON and the Skinwalker Ranch guy. What was his name? It's going to drive me crazy. Anyway, yeah, they're a nonprofit. They get their money mostly from membership anymore. So people just donating their money to this. It's just such a sad and tired organization. They revamped it. I was all excited about this years ago. They were talking about kind of rebirth, and Robert Bigelow, that's his name, Robert Bigelow. They were talking about rebirth and rebranding and redoing and injecting some youth and enthusiasm, and all they did was change the logo. They changed the logo. Yeah, well, I threw my hat in the ring, said I'll run it, and nobody got with me. I don't have a degree, so apparently they'd rather have these older guys running it who are kind of out of touch with being in the field, investigating with people, and understanding the whole business aspect of operating a large nonprofit organization. I've run a nonprofit, so I've already done that. I understand how meeting notes and all that stuff, you have to have there's certain requirements to have a 501c3 and all that stuff, all the stuff you've got to turn every year. And I've done that before. I switched out jobs pretty much almost every quarter. So I've done all the jobs. MUFON, I'm willing to help, but that's okay. You don't want me. Let's go to ghosts. Man, it's been a while since we talked about ghosts. And, when you talk about lists, when you talk about top tens, generally we talk about that at the end of the year, right? I mean, we're still in the third quarter of the year. Does the paranormal have quarters when you're looking at the year? So it'd be like January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. So we're right at the end of the third quarter. October, November, December, the powerhouse months of the paranormal. Not really, but October usually is a huge month, and then October kind of simmers into November, and then December is pretty much the pulse of a corpse as far as the paranormal is concerned. Usually, I don't know why. It's just how it is. But obviously people are writing articles right now to get people to point themselves toward their websites, because Halloween is around the corner. People are buying stuff. They're picking out pumpkins right now. They're getting ready to get their candy corn, because everybody loves candy corn, the number one candy on the planet for Halloween, right? Yes, that's what I thought. And it kind of goes hand in hand with some of the fall stuff, but I'm more of a Halloween fan than a fall fan. But you'll start seeing these lists, so it's not just a end of the year wrap up list, but I usually don't get too involved in those stories, but I think this one is a really interesting one, and I want to get people involved in it, and I want to share my kind of feelings on it too, because I was kind of a little perturbed when I'm reading it. I was like, oh, this is a pretty good list. And I stood back and thought, I was like, wait a minute, who came up with this? Obviously not anybody who is as a researcher or an investigator. It's just somebody who just looks up stuff for fun or for a living. But this comes from 10best.com, which is it's a division of USA Today, and talks about haunted locations in the United States. And every location I don't care where you're at. Every place you go and investigate claims that they're the most haunted in the United States because there's no way you can validate that. There's no way you can invalidate that. You could just make the claim, and a handful of people will follow you and they'll support that. They could put it on bumper stickers and black T-shirts, and people will believe anything that's on a black T-shirt. Trust me, I've met a few. And the good thing about people who believe in ghosts, well, like most everyone else out there, is they're full of opinions and batteries. USA Today has a division, again, called 10 Best. It can be found at 10best.com, the letter 1, or the numbers 10, best.com, 10best.com. Among the multiple categories, it has to read, there's a few that you can vote for yourself. You can vote on things to push it higher up in the rankings. And one such page is for a Reader's Choice 2022 for the best haunted destination in the United States. And I was so excited to see that. I was like, ooh. And I was hoping that they would start at the bottom and work their way to the top, but they spoiled it. I don't want to see the number one right away. That kind of ruins it. To me, anyway. I don't know. Why would you want to see the first one? Wouldn't you want to see the last, the bottom? Anyway, so far the listing includes 20 interesting selections, and I'm going to go from the bottom. I'm not going from the top. Let's go all the way to the bottom here. The Moss Beach Distillery out of Moss Beach, California, which is that's a pretty popular one. It's been on TV. There's a little controversy about that, but if you already knew about the Moss Beach Distillery, it should have been controversy, guys, ghost hunters. California is a happening place for haunted places. That's not the highest ranking California one. You probably already know which one that is. The next is Fort Abraham Lincoln State Park in Mandan, North Dakota. Wasn't it ever even on my list? But apparently it is on somebody else's. Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta, Georgia. I've heard of that one. The Moon River Brewing Company in Savannah, Georgia. Sounds like just like an advertisement. The Whaley House Museum in San Diego, California is in 16th place. That's a pretty big one. Fort Delaware, Delaware City. Any kind of fort. There's hundreds of them. That's in 15th place. The Queen Mary, Long Beach, California, number 14. I was surprised to see it that low. As the next one, very shocked, the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville, West Virginia, number 13. Wow, no, that should be toward the top. I've only been to a handful of these places on this list, but out of the list, the actual physical list of 20 places that's on this list, I'm putting that one at number 1. Believe it or not, yes. Moundsville Penitentiary is my number 1. That's just of the 20 that's on the list, but there's quite a few that didn't make the list that I'm a little upset about. Yuma Territorial Prison, Museum, and Park in Yuma, Arizona is number 12. What? I guess people like Yuma. The Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana, number 11. I think a lot of people would think that should be a little higher, but at least it's there. The top 10, a respectable number 10 for the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum, St. Augustine, Florida. Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, comes in at number 9 so far. You can still vote on this. Don't fret. You can still change things. The Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California, comes in at number 8. No. It's not Sam and Dean's house. Somebody actually asked me that once. Is the Winchester Mystery House? Is that where Sam and Dean live? No. Fort Mifflin on the Delaware, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, number 7. Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, number 6. And if you've never heard of that, that's another one I've been to. That's home to Robert the Haunted Doll, whom you must ask for permission before you take a photograph of, or mischief will follow, or so they say. Never had any mischief to me, but believe it or not, my picture didn't even turn out either. So I guess maybe it was mischief. They said that if you don't ask, your picture doesn't take out. But my camera I had, it was a little dark in there, and didn't really get a good picture anyway. It's too much glass in there. Anyway, the Wood Island Lighthouse in Bedford, Maine, number 5. I never would have thought about that being in a top haunted list. That's a place that I've not been in it or been to it, but I've seen it. Not been on the island, but I've been pretty close to that. I was actually out in Biddeford Pool, which is it's at the mouth of the Saco River, which is it's pretty much spills out into the ocean, but it's pretty cool. A creepy looking lighthouse, but I think a lot of them are. Let's see, the Grove in Jefferson, Texas, number 4. Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia. Tala makes it to number 3. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Louisiana. Did I say Louisiana? I meant Louisville, Kentucky. Number 2, not my favorite spot. I really don't see what the other than a wicked-looking building. I think Waverly Hills is the most overblown, blown out of proportion, most unhaunted place I've ever been to in my life. And I get a lot of flack for saying that, but I didn't think anything of that. I think a lot of it is so overblown. The stories are false. There's a lot of fiction generated by the people that put the place on, and perpetuated by a lot of the groups that are associated with it. No offense, but I don't really care. I'm not involved in any of that anyway anymore. And the stories are just made up of things that will naturally occur because there's no windows on most of it. It's sitting up on a hill surrounded by traffic and dogs and people talking that you can easily record. And you can actually listen to people's conversations. I actually listen to people talking on the phone, standing outside on their balconies, probably talking about things they shouldn't have been talking about their spouses and things. But yeah, you can hear all sorts of stuff. And if those people in that area only knew that there was people creeping around with high-tech devices that could pick up sounds, they probably had the place shut down. But anyway, I would say not haunted. Not haunted. Not as much as what they say it is. Nobody threw themselves off roofs. Nobody hung themselves on pipes that were just created 30 years after these said people hung themselves. Anyway, so far, the number 1 haunted location, according to the internet experts, and this is why I didn't want to see it first. I would rather had waited. Zach Bagans, the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, Nevada. So no Mansfield Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. That's a load of crap. Mansfield would have been my number 1. The Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, didn't make the list. USS North Carolina didn't make the list. Lizzie Borden's house in Fall River, Massachusetts, didn't make the list. The Crescent Hotel, Eureka Springs, Arkansas, didn't make the list. The Dock Street Theater, Charleston, South Carolina. Nothing in Charleston made the list. The Driscoll in Austin, Texas. The Red Onion Saloon in Skagway. Come on. I was mad about that one because I've been there a couple of times. What about Gettysburg? Anybody ever heard of that before? Good grief. You guys got to call me when you're going to do a list like this. I'll help you out. Anyway, you can vote for your favorite of those first 20 locations that I'd mentioned once per day until Monday, September 12th at 12 p.m. Eastern. And the winning locations will be announced on Friday, September 23rd. I can't wait, but I seriously doubt that's going to change all that much. They don't really tell you who voted how much for each one, I don't think. So no way for me to know what it's going to take to get Zach Bagans out of first. That's all I care about. I don't want to see Zach Bagans win that. No. You can also vote for the best haunted hotel or the best ghost tour and best haunted attraction if you feel so inclined to. Yeah. Pretty much all comes down to money nowadays. Speaking of money, but I got an extra few $billion to burn. That's kind of how some people are starting to feel about this whole Artemis I launch that was supposed to highlight the talk. And maybe I jinxed myself. I was excited about this. I talked about this all last year. I talked about how 2022 is going to be the year that people are going to start talking about going to the moon. We're going to start talking about Mars. People are going to actually start to realize that we're going back into space, and it's going to be a big deal. And so far, nothing. It's been a pretty big disappointment. Of course, you would have thought that our technology hopefully would have gotten better. We would have figured some stuff out. But these things happen. This is normal to have delays like this. Although I think, I didn't really come out and say it, but I kind of felt this way last week that I felt like they already knew something was wrong, but they just really felt like if they didn't bring this thing out and put it out in public display, they're going to be in trouble. So better to have a couple of delays and then roll this thing back in for 2 weeks than to not roll it out at all and then wait a couple of more months because people would have just lost their patience. So Mars is a long way off, but latest series of delays might hurt the financial future of missions, not only to Mars, but possibly to the moon. People are already talking about pulling the plug on this thing. The second attempt at a launch was this past Saturday. The launch, they closed it before the launch window even opened. It was scrubbed due to a liquid hydrogen leak. The Artemis I stack is, I haven't heard officially, but it's probably more than likely going to make its way back to the hangar. It's going to be probably mid-October at the earliest at this point. And it gets any later than that, forget it. It's not going this year, which would be a huge setback. And there's already some mumblings about people saying that maybe we shouldn't have been spending all that money on a rocket that we can't get off the ground. But NASA Administrator Bill Nelson stated that 2 scrubs cost far less than a failure of the rocket at any stage of launch, and that the space shuttle was sent back to the vehicle assembly building 20 times before it launched. Yeah, I remember that. That was very frustrating as a kid to see that over and over and over. But the good news is, out of all this, they got the Voyager I working again. That's pretty sad. We got a brand new state-of-the-art rocket, billions of dollars worth of technology, cutting-edge computers, and yet we've got a 45-year-old rocket with computer chips that couldn't even function anything on your cell phone at this point. That is, I don't know what's going on here. My watch is going crazy. Stop it. Yeah, technology, it's come a long way, but man, this thing's still ticking out there in space. A few months of strange readings earlier this year, and it got a lot of people thinking. I was a little worried. Every time they talk about this thing's going to be dead, something happens that comes back to life. It's kind of weird. They thought the batteries and equipment had finally given out. It started sending back some weird information back in May of this year, and while many were just ready to let the craft just disappear into the void of space, it took about 4 months to diagnose and fix the craft. Basically, long story short, the wrong computer is put in charge of sending back data, and they had to figure out. They figured out. Took them 4 months to figure out how to turn the right one on and the wrong one off. But the problem is they need to figure out how all that happened in the first place to keep it from happening in the future. Voyager I and its sister Voyager II are loaded with equipment that was state of the art at the time. But again, 45 years old. That's pretty ancient technology at this point. Most of the gadgets are turned off, no longer functioning anyway. The only usage of the onboard battery is to keep the craft's antenna pointed at Earth and periodically give updates about the craft's health and status. The Voyager 1 celebrated its 45th anniversary yesterday after being launched on September 5th, 1977. So happy birthday, Voyager 1, as it moves slowly through space. 22 hours it takes for communication to be turned over. So if we were to send a beam a signal to it, it takes 22 hours to get to it. So any response, again, would take 22 hours to come back. It's at a distance of about 14.5 billion miles away. Billion with a B. It's traveling at a paltry 38,000 miles per hour, which sounds fast, and yes, it would probably peel the paint right off your car if you did it on Earth. But out in space, that's really nothing. I guess that's kind of fast. It's 10.5 miles per second. But just think, the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. The craft entered interstellar space about 8 years ago, meaning it's left our solar system. And with that, I'll leave you for this week. But for next week, keep your eyes in the skies, your ears in the woods, the hair standing on the back of your neck, and always keep your mind slightly ajar. Above all else, don't stop believing. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.